The Carolina Panthers last year had another disappointing year. Panthers started 0-2, losing by 37 to the Saints, who dat, and then 23 in the second week to the Rams. The Panthers benched, no, not to the Rams, to the Chargers. The Panthers benched Bryce Young for Andy Dalton. Dalton won his first start, beating the Raiders, who had just beaten the Ravens the previous week. Dalton's then loses 4 games in a row and is replaced by Bryce in Week 8. Young goes 4-6 to close the year. Pull up that first graphic. Bryce Young, so first 18 starts of his career, he was 2-16 with the passer rating of 70.9, 11-13 touchdown interception for 173 yards per game. In his last 10 starts, which is why the buzz is kind of positive in Carolina and why the rest of the NFL thinks like Bryce Young's still got a chance, 4-6, 89 passer rating, 15-6 touchdown interception ratio, and then 210 yards per game. What I will say, though, is maybe Bryce Young was in a spot where, like, I'll just straight out say it. The roster is terrible. It's atrocious. It's one of the worst rosters in the league from a talent perspective. It's almost lower than the Arizona Cardinals are. And Arizona had another good draft, so I think Arizona has a potential to be better. And the stats don't lie. If I pull up the Panthers last season, offensively they were atrocious. That's a lot of it was bad receivers, running back health. Miles Sanders, they gave a big contract, and then he is just bad throughout that season. So how much of the fault there is on Bryce Young? Andy Dalton was your quarterback for 6-7 games, so like that's going to hurt you offensively. But defensively, they were atrocious. Derek Brown got hurt week 1. Shaq Thompson got hurt 4 weeks in, and so they were missing their 2 best pieces. And then, Jadeveon Clowney is like your best defender at that point. And that is, at his age, not something that's going to be a page for success. No. They were a historically bad defense last year. Obviously, you can see 32nd in the league in a lot of categories, but they allowed the most rushing yards per game by a single team since 1978. So this is historically bad defense. And then I'll go ahead and go into their
rock like that in 1978.
Exactly. High-powered offenses in 1978. So, yeah, historically bad. Their additions, I'll get their losses first. They lose Clowney, their best defender, for most of the season. Johnny Hecker, their punter, is gone. They lost running back Velus Jones Jr., Lonnie Johnson Jr., the safety, went to the Raiders. Miles Sanders is a Cowboy now. And then Shaq Thompson, their best defender outside of Derek Brown, is joining the Buffalo Bills. To replace that, this is who they added. They added Rico Dowdle, who had a poor season with the Cowboys. Trayvon Moehrig, who was a starting safety for the Raiders. Bobby Brown, bench defensive tackle for the Rams. Patrick Jones, who had a good season. He had 7.5 sacks for the Vikings. And then in the draft, they had Ted McMillan, Nick Sorton, Princely, with the long last name from Old Piss.
Mikamora, something like that?
No. There is no D.
Emonway.
Emanuelan, or however you want to say it.
Uyungale, I believe.
Yeah, something like that. And then Trevor Etienne from Florida. So not a ton of additions. Now, Nick Sorton and Princely are going to start almost immediately for them, and they are like their pass rushers. Derek Brown is expected to come back. J.C. Horn was extended. But outside of that, Sanders, I'll come to you with the Panthers. You have them going 8-9. It is one of the largest discrepancies between records out of any of us so far in our predictions. Why are you high on the Panthers this season?
I expect a big leap forward in year 3 for Bryce Young. I really liked how he played when he came back last season. And then I also I really like Tedero McMillan. I think that's a really good piece for them to add. I told you before the show, JP, I expect Bryce Young to be like a top 12 quarterback this season. I'm expecting a big leap for him. And then they brought in Tedero McMillan. They still have Xavier Legette. They've got an experience. I mean, Adam Thielen is not going to be great. He's old, but they still do have him in that room. And then on defense, they bring back Derek Brown, which I think is huge. He was the 4th highest graded interior defender in 2023. He goes down with an injury in week 1 of last season and missed the entirety of the season. So they bring him back. And then they bring in Bobby Brown, Deshaun Wharton, Patrick. We already talked about some of these guys. And then they also, I believe, use picks all their picks from the 2nd to 5th round on defenders. So that's not necessarily that second, the 2nd, 3rd round picks. Those are still guys who could start, and then you get in 4th and 5th rounds, and those are guys who maybe you find a Puka Nakua, a Diamond, a Jim. So I do think that there's a chance the Panthers could be decent this year. I think that they're going to get better than last year. I think Bryce Young will be better than last year. I think he'll have a better team around him than last year. I don't think they're going to be as bad as they were last year.
I don't see the Bryce Young top 12. That feels like a stretch for me. I think he was good last season, but even when he was really good and people were really happy with his play, they were 4-6, and they were playing a weak schedule down the stretch as well. Now they lost 2 of those games in overtime, so it very easily could have been 6-4.
Sure.
Which potentially puts you at 8-9. But I just there's a reason I don't like the additions necessarily. Besides, Patrick Jones is fine, but Nick Scorton and Princely were low on the edge rusher list in terms of rankings in the draft. And I know it was a draft where we were talking more so about the depth of it, but they were 6th and 7th in terms of edge rushers. And if we're not high on, really that high on James Pierce, who was, in my opinion, markedly better than both of these players, then they're starting because the roster is so bad. They have no choice but to start these guys. And I still don't even think these guys are that good. And then they'll be starting as rookies as well, having to be productive defenders. I don't see how these additions are, necessarily that much of a positive to take this team from being a 5-win team into an 8-win team.
So you've got them being worse this season than last.
Oh
season.
yeah, by far. I have them finishing 2-15. I look up and down their schedule, and I don't see many games. In fact, I had to really kind of give them 2 games to keep them from going 0-17. I really feel that way. They start the season in Jacksonville. I don't expect that to be a win with Trevor Lawrence and Travis Hunter and all of that buzz in Jacksonville with Liam Cohen. Week 2, they have to travel across the country to play Arizona. People are like, oh, Arizona's just bad, which, I mean, you guys both said that, having picked the Panthers to beat the Cardinals. But they were an 8-9 football team last year. Jonathan Gannon is building something with Kyler Murray and that team and that roster. Now you can – is this the Panthers are good and then they're just beating the Cardinals? Or
I just think the Cardinals – I do not like the Cardinals.
I think the Cardinals are better than the Panthers.
Okay. That's fine.
Worse teams beat better teams.
Week 3
so.
is the one of the 2 wins I have them. It's hosting Atlanta, but I kind of felt like I had to give them that game. Week 4, they're in New England. That doesn't seem like a win for me. Miami comes to Carolina week 5. There's some potential there, but then you go down a tough stretch for me where they don't win another game. Dallas, Jets, Buffalo, Packers, the Saints, Falcons, Niners, Rams, Tampa Bay's in there, Seattle's in there, Tampa Bay's in there twice. Tell me on that schedule a team besides New Orleans, because I understand that take, even though it's wrong. Tell me a team that the Panthers have a better roster than on their schedule, because I don't see a single one for me.
Will they be favored in the game to start the season?
I'm curious if they're favored to beat Jacksonville week 1. I'll look at that. But
I doubt it.
I think so. I think they're going to be
think
favored,
they are favored?
over the
Okay.
Saints, potentially.
I know spreads are so small in the NFL, but that's just...
Yeah. I think the only game that I feel like their best chance to have been favored would have been Jacksonville or Arizona, but with both those being road games, it kind of hurts them. So maybe the Saints at home, they're favored over.
Possible.
I like the. I just
Jacksonville's
like
favored by 2.5. Week
the
1.
only pieces on that Cardinals roster that I like is Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know there's another piece on that roster that, you talk about, you asked before the show who
Buda Baker, Kyler Murray.
I do not like Kyler Murray. I definitely don't love.
Would you
Kyler Murray.
rather Bryce Young or Kyler Murray? Who's going to have a better season?
And then they also
I would
got
say Bryce
Will
Young.
Johnson.
Okay, Bryce Young. Okay,
I would say Bryce Young is going to have a better season than Kyler Murray.
I'll kind of chime in.
Statistically, a record.
Definitely statistically.
Statistically, maybe.
Okay.
Record-wise, I don't know.
I'm going to chime in here, kind of give my thoughts. I'm more alongside JP. I have them going 4-13. I just feel like it's an incomplete roster. I was kind of cheating over your shoulder reading your notes and talking about the team continuing to surround Bryce Young with weapons. I don't really feel like they have weapons. I feel like it's Tet, and then you have a couple okay receivers, and then especially looking at the backfield group, I'm really not a big fan of who they have back there.
You don't like Trevor Etienne?
Not the biggest fan.
Chuba Hubbard is going to be the lead back.
Yeah, but I'm not. I mean, Chuba Hubbard's a fine NFL running back, but I don't think I think you're going to struggle to get consistent production out of the backfield and have a consistent run game. And I would not be shocked to see Tet have kind of a bit of a rough transition to the NFL. He didn't separate well in college, was the biggest knock.
Yeah.
And he just out physicaled guys, and maybe he can do that to NFL guys, corners and safeties, because he's bigger than them, right? But I could see there kind of be a little come to Jesus moment there early on in his career, and him have to adjust. And I think he will adjust. I think he's a very good player, but I'm not sure if he's someone I expect to come in and be like, I'm a number one my first year. Let's get this done, Bryce Young. And then the defense additions just are fine. Legally obligated to hype up the Bobby Brown signing because he went to A&M. Same with the Nick Scorton draft pick. One thing I'll say about Nick Scorton, you're talking about him maybe starting and that wouldn't be good. I agree for the most part. There is a world where it's well known he bulked up during his season at A&M and it went poorly. And if he drops weight more to the Purdue level, he was very productive, that he could actually have a pretty good rookie season. That's a big if, though. I don't really see it. I think, like I said, kind of an incomplete roster.
Well, part of the having a good rookie season is the fact that they're going to be forced into starting, so they're going to
They're going to get some stats,
counting numbers somehow.
He started all the time at A&M and didn't really get any sacks.
What did he weigh?
Someone has to get
was
to
he
the quarterback.
closer to?
He was already dropping down. I believe
he was closer to the Purdue.
and he talked about it too, that he bulked up and it didn't work in his favor, basically.
Did they try playing him on the interior, or they just wanted him to be heavier on the outside?
They just wanted him bigger, and he got 190, 185, something like that.
That's how much he weighed, or how much he added?
I think how much he added would be crazy. I think that's what he was
at
pre
Purdue.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I thought you said that's what he was at 8.
No, I'd have to double check what he was at A&M, but he definitely added. So
Ted McMillan is going to be the number one receiver because they have no other choice.
Well, I agree, but a number one in terms of relative to the league.
I agreed there.
If he's not the leading receiver on this team,
that's going to be tough.
Something's gone really wrong.
People are high on Xavier Legette in Carolina as well.
Did you see the video of him getting somebody out of a mud puddle in a 4-wheeler?
No.
He's a cool guy.
I kind of love him. I kind of like...
But I don't really feel like he had a great
You can love
rookie
the
season.
guy.
Yeah.
I
feel like he's another guy that put up some stats because he had to play.
Yeah.
Panthers are favored in 3 games next season. 2 are against New Orleans, which will change, obviously. And then week 3, they are favored by 1.5 against the Atlanta Falcons. So they would, they're favored in 3 games next year, and that's more than likely not going to be the case as the season progresses, unless the Falcons start 0-2, which is on the board facing the Buccaneers and the Vikings. Yeah, this is just an awful roster, and like I said, I had to give them 2 wins. They're a candidate for 0-17.
There's no way they can.
I feel pretty sure they're not going to go.
They're not going to, because that's really hard to do. Because the NFL is any given Sunday league, and teams can win games they're not supposed to all the time, which is why I have them winning 2 games.
Sure,
but they are a potential candidate for that because. Yeah, Bryce Young can put up good stats, but you still got to score more points than the other team. And their defense was historically bad, and they lose key pieces, and they add rookies. And besides that, they add the Vikings, Patrick Jones. He might have a chance to be good for them on the edge. But, my question to you, Sanders, and I asked you this earlier, but, is there a guy on this team outside of Derek Brown, which I can understand, that's even top 10 at their own position in the league?
Right now, no. But like I said, I've got Bryce Young as top 12, so he's fringe there.
Not top 10.
He's not. He's not top 10 yet.
Is there a single guy on this team that you love? And by love, I mean as a player at that position. As in, I love Josh Allen because he is an excellent quarterback.
Other than Derek Brown, no.
Exactly.
A couple things. One, if you were doing like a preseason power ranking, would they be 32?
Right now, if you had to ask me, yeah, I even think the Browns obviously have a better roster than them. They have a much better defense. So yeah, I'd have them rated
The Browns 100%
32nd. The Giants are close in that regard, but Abdul Carter is better than any player.
Their
on the
defensive
Panthers.
line is pretty because
And
they've got
Kayvon Thibodeau.
they also got the
And
Panthers
Brian
whole-
Burns as well, but
Sure.
and a big sexy Dexter Lawrence as well.
A big get.
So, like they're not bad either. This is one of the worst rosters in the league, and yeah, they should actually. It'll be interesting because I would assume I'm going to have them as the worst record in the league, more than likely. Jack, you're probably going to be close.
I have the Browns as worse already.
Okay.
Confirmed.
So, but still, any team in the top 5 is going to be a candidate for all the quarterbacks coming out next year's class. So I guess to finish up on the Panthers, Sanders' answer is probably no, but like, is Bryce Young the long-term option after this year, or do you really consider drafting a quarterback if they're in the top 5 next year? I guess you can say the season just has to play out, but
Yeah.
I think if he plays like he did down the stretch, but they find themselves in the top 5, which I think is pretty realistic just because their roster's not great. I think, there's a world where he has to put up a solid season numbers-wise, but they just don't win very many games. I don't think they'll draft a quarterback.
Yeah, like you said, if he plays like he did in the back half of the season, I don't think there's any way you draft a quarterback.
Now, if they end up being like the worst team overall and, I don't know, some QB just like kind of has risen up the draft boards. It's like this is a can't miss prospect.
I thought you were
there's a
using the
world.
word risen as in like
He's risen him up.
I didn't
No.
see where you were going with that sentence, and I was like, "There's no way he just did that."
Yeah,
Continue.
no, sorry. But yeah, like, I'm trying to think like I feel like Trevor Lawrence, everyone like loved Trevor Lawrence as a prospect. If someone ends up in that Trevor Lawrence tier and they're the worst team, they have the first overall pick, yeah, I think they'll take a QB.
Yeah, but I don't see any of the quarterbacks in this class getting that high. I feel like Trevor Lawrence didn't really have any question marks. Trevor Lawrence, he was the perfect prospect out of high school. He was the guy that everyone was saying, "Oh, if you could go to the NFL straight out of high school, Trevor Lawrence is like the one guy that could do it."
They were wrong.
They were wrong.
I disagree, but
You think
Clemson guy. I mean, he's
won a
been
playoff
fine.
game,
Yeah,
by
he's
the
been
way.
fine.
Yeah,
Justin Herbert hasn't won a playoff game.
I'd rather have Justin Herbert.
I would think I would also rather have Justin Herbert. over
You
Trevor
guys,
Lawrence.
man, get off the Kool-Aid.
No, like I
Played
think
head-to-head in
I
the
know.
playoffs.
I know I'd rather
They
have
literally
Justin Herbert
played
starting
head-to-head
for
in the
my
playoffs.
team. I think you could ask 100 NFL fans and 80 would say Justin Herbert.
Yeah, and they don't know ball. Just
Okay.
like
You don't
90% of
either,
our
but yeah,
comment
apparently
sections.
none of us do. Sanders, I feel like you're kind of maybe making your case to be a Panthers fan.
Freak, I don't wanna be-
It feels that way.
We already have a Panthers fan. I don't want to be a Panthers fan.
Okay,
You can be a Panthers
Nah,
fan
I'm good,
still.
bro.
We have numerous Saints fans.
he also feel kind of not insulted, neglected maybe. You didn't answer my question to you
Oh,
in
what was the
yapping.
question?
Well,
Yeah.
your Dolphins made a big acquisition.
No, we'll save
to
that
fill
for
a
the
hole.
AFC East breakdown. We'll save that for
Okay.
later.
I gotta know right now. How do you feel about the Darren Waller signing?
As a not a Dolphins fan, I don't care.
But you're a Dolphins fan, man.
To close out the Panthers, one of my best bets of the season, take them under 6.5 total wins next season. That is their current odds is 6.5 is the line.
JP just throwing money away.
I'm not even, that's better than the bet I'm about to tell you about. Under 5.5 feels like a lock. They are favored big time. They're favored to win over 6.5. So the line is moved. Oh, they're at 6.5. Dumb. 6.5. They're favored to go over 6.5. Not even plus money. So a lot of value in under 6.5, and if not 5.5 as well for the Carolina Panthers, because that roster is just bad. Like Bryce Young is going to have to play to a number 1 pick level for that to be a team that is of any threat in the NFC South, which is sad. But hey, another year of drafting better players. That's how you build a better roster.
True.
Is through the
Amen.
draft.